If during the Second World War, field howitzers and heavy guns in the Soviet Army were mainly towed by tracked tractors, in the German Army, mostly wheeled tracked tractors, then the Italians in the early 1940s developed a wheeled tractor for these purposes, rightly believing that this is the least expensive type of equipment in production and operation. Moreover, they had such experience. One of the most interesting vehicles of the First World War period was the Italian FIAT-SPA articulated wheeled tractor, which solved the same tasks. But by the end of the 1930s, it was hopelessly outdated and needed to be replaced. The Italians decided to replace the FIAT-SPA with a new two-axle tractor. No longer articulated, but all-wheel drive, with all-wheel steering and with independent suspension of all wheels. It was named FIAT-SPA M40. Today it is the rarest tractor. It has survived in less than 5 copies, and one of these copies is in Moscow, in the Museum of Transport, in the exposition of the exhibition Motors of War. Even more valuable is that it is not a static, but a moving instance. I recently attended a dynamic demonstration of this tractor. During it, the FIAT-SPA M40 started up and drove under its own power to the museum courtyard, where it made several circles. This time I will tell about this very unusual and interesting tractor. The number 40 in the name of the tractor is the year of development. That is the 1940s. But serial production of the FIAT-SPA M40 began only in 1942. One of the first serial tractors went to Stalingrad. These tractors were produced by the FIAT-SPA plant, which in the Fiat concern specialized in the development and production of military vehicles. The operating weight of the FIAT-SPA M40 was 6.5 tons. It could tow up to 9 tons. In addition to howitzers, the tractor was intended for towing heavy anti-aircraft guns and wheeled trailers for transporting light tanks. From a technical point of view, it was a very unusual tractor. To begin with, it was equipped at that time with a not quite familiar diesel engine. This is a 6-cylinder Fiat 366 with a capacity of 105 horsepower. Not so much for a tractor of this class. This is partly why it has such big wheels like a tractor. Such a solution increased traction capabilities and, at the same time, increased cross-country ability, but the maximum speed of the car turned out to be low, only 40 km/h. However, to tow howitzers or carry tanks, more is not required. But the most interesting thing is the transmission and chassis. Firstly, the suspension. It is completely independent. And, at the same time, as is clearly seen, it uses transverse leaf springs. Secondly, on the right, where the steering knuckle, we see nothing more than the tip of the cardan shaft. That is, here the cardan shafts fit individually to each of the 4 wheels. It turns out that the transfer case distributes the torque not between the axles, but with the help of 4 cardan shafts directly between the wheels. Although there was right-hand traffic in Italy, the driver's seat was not placed on the left, but on the right. This is done so that the driver can see his side of the road better when driving with oncoming traffic. To the left of the driver's hand, the casing of the engine compartment is visible, and behind the front row of seats 2 more rows are located, for the gun crew. There were no doors and at that time it was believed that it would be easier for the crew to leave the car when it was fired upon by the enemy. Let's take a closer look at how the gun crew was placed in the tractor. As you can see, only 2 people are sitting against the course of movement. Between them is the engine compartment, and in the back, a whole sofa that can accommodate 4. The car was officially considered an 8-seater. The seat cushion in the center is removable. Under it is the battery compartment. Behind the last row of seats is a roomy cargo compartment. Simply put, the trunk. Some loads can be placed inside it, and some on top. For this, special bumpers are made along the perimeter of the upper trunk panel. Let's pay attention to the engine compartment cover. It is made of 2 double-leaf parts with external locks, and with a semi-circular top. Maybe such a top looks great, but it is painfully impractical. You can't put anything on top. The strangest thing is that the FIAT-SPA M40 began to enter the Italian army when it had been fighting in the expanses of the Soviet Union for 2 years, but the car nevertheless did not receive a normal closed cabin. Its open body covered with an awning and missing doors may have been good for waging a war in Africa, somehow still suitable for the European theatre of operations, but for Russia, with its severe frosts of many months, such a layout solution looks more than strange. However, a similar approach at that time reigned in many armies of the world. The Americans even tried to supply us under Lend-Lease with the famous Studebaker US-6 with a special army cabin, that is, with a cabin closed only with an awning. However, I will somehow tell the story of this famous American truck in Russia separately. The FIAT-SPA M40 still had a closed wooden cabin, but only in 1945. And before that the only thing that the plant could offer Italian gunners freezing in the harsh Russian winter was an independent heater. And then, he warmed up not so much the passengers as the diesel engine, so that it could somehow be started in the cold Russian winter. Why is the FIAT-SPA M40 a rare museum piece today? The fact is that relatively few of these tractors were made. And how much specifically, there is no reliable information. According to general estimates, somewhere around 150 of these tractors were delivered to the Italian army, and the Wehrmacht received about the same amount. So FIAT-SPA M40 is one of the most unique exhibits of the Motors of War exhibition.